Good afternoon. Welcome to the April 18th session of the Cape Cod Regional Government Assembly of Delegates. I'll call this meeting to order, and we will begin with a moment of silence to honor our troops who have died in service to our country and all those serving our country in the armed forces. Thank you, and now we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. The clerk will call the roll.
Richard Anderson. Present. Cheryl Andrews. Here. Ronald Bergstrom. Here. Leo Kakunis. Here. Christopher Kanega. James Killian. Here. Marcia King. Here. Thomas Lynch. Here. Teresa Martin. Here. Deborah McCutcheon. Here. Spiro Mitrakostas. Here. John Oman. Here. Paul Pilcher. Anthony Scalise. Julia Taylor. Here. Mr. Speaker, we have a quorum present with 91.45% of the delegates present, 8.55% absent.
Thank you. Now I'll need a motion to approve the calendar of business.
Motion to approve the calendar of business.
Second.
Moved and second. Any additions or corrections to the calendar? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, you should have received an electronic copy of the Journal of April 4, 2012. Does anyone have any corrections to the journal? Hearing none.
Motion to approve the Journal of April 4th, 2012.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Okay, we have an abstention. We have now communications from the Board of Regional Commissioners, and representing the board is Sheila Lyons, Commissioner Lyons.
Good afternoon, everyone. And obviously, this is a packed day, so everybody is very interested. There really isn't anything to report from the county commissioners other than Commissioner Doherty has a very bad cold, and we sent him home with a note to his mother not to send him that way again. And we had a visit from the Coastal Resources Commission. I'm not saying it right, the Conservation Resources, and we signed a letter in support of their securing permanent grants funding for the rest of the wetland restoration project that has been going forward. And it's been an annual, year-by-year appropriation. So now they're trying to secure this to be a permanent appropriation until the funding is, the $30 million has been finally issued, and that's going to go through a farm bill. So we signed on to that and gave a letter of support, and we just talked about space up at the jailhouse. Nothing has been decided, but we're still trying to coordinate people moving up there and having the appropriate space that they need, each department. And that was basically it today. There's
Questions for Commissioner Lyons? I have a question. We have on, when the Assembly convenes, we're going to deliberate and vote on proposed resolution 12-01, which is a $23,710 appropriation for the Human Services Department. Can you give us a brief? I mean, you submitted it, so just
yes.
tell us.
Basically, that is money that's coming out of a salary line item into a consulting line item. And the Mass in Motion grant that was received by the Human Services Department, which is $60,000 a year for 5 years, it does give money towards a salary. So Beth is able to, she needs consulting. It's not enough for a full salary, so she needs some consulting money to help with the administration of that grant. So it's just really a matter of moving it from one line to another. But there's no increase to a budget or added personnel.
So the $23,000 is taken out of the grant, out of the $60,000 grant? No, that's an additional.
No, this is just from her salary line item
Okay.
going into a consulting line item.
All right. Well, everybody seems.
Question?
Oh, wait a minute, we got one here. Spiro.
Commissioner, actually, you met last week when we did not, and I think you took a pretty substantive position in renewing the consulting contract for the wastewater collaboratives staff, I guess, for lack of a better term. Is there any consideration given along the way to bringing that contract in-house and turning it into an employee position as opposed to an outside consultancy?
There hasn't been any discussion of that to date. It's worked fine the way it has gone. You're speaking about the executive director's position?
Yes.
Yes.
I think I was watching Andy Gottlieb prior to his briefing to you get an extension or a renewal of the contract.
Of his contract,
he's had
right.
for a number of years. Just thinking that at some point as the issue becomes more time-consuming and some of the plans that the director of the collaborative and the director of the commission are putting forward about going out and formulating a wastewater remediation plan for the county, it would require that to become a full-time county position as opposed to a consultancy.
It may, but I don't believe that we've come to that crossroad yet. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a follow-up on that. Originally, the position of the executive director was part of the wastewater collaborative, okay? And it was the feeling of the people in the collaborative that he answered to them. In other words, he was an employee of the collaborative, or he was that. But then the commissioners, and I think quite rightly said, no, everybody's an employee of the commissioners, so now he's an employee of the commissioners. But it seems that his job, if you want, or what he's been doing has been more and more closely tied to the Cape Cod Commission. I mean, he and Paul are practically joined at the hip when I talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, I mean, wouldn't you seem to be more of appropriate to make him contracted under the Cape Cod Commission, since he seems to be moving away from his position as the executive director of the collaborative? I mean, I don't mean to lay this on you, but I just say, and more working with the commission on wastewater issues.
But they are two different issues. They are two different departments, and they're bringing the expertise in from those two departments going forward. One is really looking at the regulation and use of this, and the other is guiding implementation and direction. So I don't think that there's really a need for that at this moment. If that is the case and it becomes more work, I think that discussion will be brought to our attention by those parties, and then we can consider that.
Yeah.
But right now, it's not an issue for either of them or for us.
John, did you say?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Commissioner Lyons, have you done any more work towards resolving what you're going to go forward with the Special Committee on County Governance?
We have not, and that probably will not come up for another 2 weeks, at the very earliest, and I'm not even sure if it will come up then, but I do think it's a conversation that we have to pick up again. We had a lot of discussion, no decision, and I do think that we have to come to some decision-making so that it can come forward to the Assembly.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you, and I...
Give Bill our best wishes. Hopefully he'll recover.
I'm sure if he's watching, he'll hear those, and we do wish him a speedy recovery, and hopefully we didn't all get infected today, and carrying it over here to you. So with that, I wish you a good budget hearing.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there any communications from members of the public? Anybody, public officials? Hearing none. The Assembly will now convene and will begin with the discussion on proposed Resolution 12-01 to approve certain budget transfers for fiscal year 2012 in accordance with Barnstable County Ordinance 11-06, Human Service Department 23-7. The amount is $23,710. You just heard Commissioner Lyons describe the need for this. Is there any discussion on this? No discussion. In that case, I will call for a vote. Is there we need a motion, that's right.
Is there a report of the subcommittee?
This resolution doesn't require apparently a Finance Committee meeting. I think I gave him the option. Did you look? You didn't look at
We
this
didn't
one?
look at it. I don't know if human services.
No.
No, as I referred back to how you've handled these in the past, it does not go to a committee for review.
Well, do we have the copy of the ordinance? Well, you want to make a motion then? Yeah.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Speaker, to vote on Resolution 1201 to transfer from line item 0013-101-5100, decrease it by $23,710, and increase line item 00131-02-5239 by $23,710. I happen, I don't know if anyone else has it, I happen to have a letter from Beth to explain it. Do people
Yeah.
know what it's for? Pardon? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, do we have a second on that?
Yeah.
Okay, it's
I mean-
moved in second. Okay, go ahead.
I don't have to explain it, I mean,
No, okay, all right.
I'll let,
So you're motioning approval of the resolution? Okay, and it's been you're seconding the approval. Okay, there's no further, Leo, there is further discussion.
Does the letter in question state the reason why there's $23,710 available in the salary line item?
yes, it does. Okay, what happened was, they have this Mass in Motion grant, and that pays for half of a staff salary and fringes, and those two items total $23,710. So what Beth wants to do is to take that money, since it's being subsidized by the grant, and move it into a line item for a consultant, because she had asked for a new person into the new fiscal year. She didn't get it, so she wants to use this money to hire a consultant to do some additional activities. I'm sorry. So that's what she wants to have done. So that's what it is.
Okay, any further comment on this? Hearing none?
Richard Anderson,
Yes.
Cheryl Andrews, Ronald Bertram,
Yes.
Leo Kukunis, James Killian, Marcia King,
Yes.
Thomas Lynch, Teresa Martin,
Yes.
Deborah McCutcheon,
Yes.
Spiro Mitrakostas, John Omen,
Yes.
Julia Taylor.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, proposed resolution 12-01 passes with 91.45% of the delegates voting yes, 8.55% are absent.
Thank you. Now we have reports of committees. The Finance Committee needs to approve their minutes of 3/14/12 and 4/4/12. John?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to ask the Finance Committee's present members that were present at the March 14th, 2012 meeting to vote, if they've read the draft minutes and approved them, a vote from Tom Lynch, Leo Kukunis, and Marcia King. All those in favor of approving those minutes?
Aye.
And no opposed, that's 3-0, Mr. Speaker.
Yep.
Moving on to the draft minutes from the Standing Committee on Finance meeting on April 4, 2012. There were 4 committee members present. Having read those minutes, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that's 4-0, Mr. Speaker. Thank
Okay.
you.
And the Finance Committee had a meeting today, and they will report the budget out at our next meeting, in which case we'll call for a vote if that's the wish of the delegates. We have a report from the clerk.
Doing a lot of talking today. I just want to let everyone know, because there have been some questions about nomination papers and when they're going to be available. And I did speak to the Elections Division today. By law, they have to be out by May 8th, but they anticipate them coming out sooner for the delegates position, and we should have them sometime around the 24th of April. So I will have them, May 2nd, I will have them available for you, but you can also get them from your town clerk's office. And with regards to subsequent dates of when the town clerk has to receive them and review them and give them back to you, et cetera, I'll have that information for you as well. I'll put it in an email so that you'll have it at your disposal. Just a quick reminder, May 2nd, which will be the next meeting, there will be a vote on the budget, and preceding the Assembly meeting at 2 o'clock, there will also be a meeting of the Special Committee on Inquiry into CLC and CVEC. You'll get all those official notices. I'm just giving you this in advance in case you need to make an accommodation on your schedule. And on the 16th of May, which is the second monthly meeting for the Assembly in May, the Finance Committee will be meeting with the auditors to review the fiscal year 2011 audit. That will take place at 3 o'clock, but at 3:30, the committee will also be meeting, I anticipate, for a public hearing on a proposed ordinance that we haven't received yet, but I know it's coming. So, I'm sorry, 2:30. So just, again, you'll get those official notices when the time is appropriate for me to post them, but just trying to give you a little bit of advance notice.
I just want to make one thing clear, just so that we can avoid any criticism. The papers are available to, not just to the delegates, but to anyone who wishes to take out papers, and they'll also be available, I think, at the town clerks, although they haven't always had assembly papers at the town clerks. So as county clerk, Janice will make them available to anyone who wishes to take out papers in the 15 towns. So anyway, under other business, we have a discussion regarding the charge review process, and I'm going to bump this to Jim Killian, who requested this agenda item, and he'll give us an intro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's not too much of an intro involved here, but I don't know if some of you have been getting some questions from people in your town about the Special Commission's report and how the Assembly plans to address it, and I'm not sure what the best way to address it. The delegate from Harwich corrected me in terms of the last charter review which was done and some of the recommendations that were made. I have to give a report to my selectmen in a couple of weeks, and I want to be able to discuss with them the last few charter reviews that were completed and what the recommendations were, so I could tell them where we're going. But I'd also like to give them a hint as to how we may proceed with the recommendations that have been submitted. You know, if anyone has any thoughts on beginning those discussions shortly after the budget is done, or if we're going to break with their recommendation into some pieces and discuss them. But obviously, people are going to want to know how we feel about it and how we might proceed.
I haven't been on the previous charter review committee that you just previously mentioned. I do have a folder with the actual language of the charter change and kind of brief explanations on how it would affect the thing. If I can dig that up, I'll be happy to get you a copy of it, because I think it would be a good referral when you do your report to the selectmen. At the time, I had issued it, and we all had gotten it, because I went to my selectmen. It was a ballot question, and I wanted to make sure that the selectmen got the word out there to the general public, so they knew what they were voting on. So I'll do my best to make sure you get a copy of that. In regards to your questions on where do we go from here, you know, I pretty well am set to the fact that we've discussed this previously. The county commissioners took it upon themselves to, some say appoint a committee, some say ask a committee to go out and do some investigative work for them and come forward with some recommendations to them. Subsequently, that has been done. I don't feel as if that report was either sanctioned by us or asked them to go out and do that. So I don't feel we presently have anything in front of us to act on. The question was asked from one of the commissioners today if they have taken any position. I'm telling people who ask me what the Assembly's position is on some of these recommendations that we don't have them before us yet. No one has said that they want to move forward with these. As you remember, 2 weeks ago, I clearly asked what the commissioner's stand was on it, especially on the wastewater issue, certainly on the governance issue, on whether they intend on moving forward to changing the structure of county government. And although they said they believe they will be doing it, we haven't seen anything yet. So I'm not sure. I thought we've had this discussion once, and we decided to go with my friend from Barnstable's suggestion that we not act until we get asked to act. Certainly, if we're going to talk about the way we feel, then it should be agended, and I'm open to do that too, but I was pretty comfortable in just waiting until we get something in front of us.
Well, James, I'm hoping to speak to the selectmen on the subject also, because I think the public needs further information. And I think it's very important that we try to lay out at a selectmen's meeting, which presumably the public will get further information from, what the differences are between what the special commission proposed in terms of change in governance and what we have existing, because God knows, not everyone is fully aware of what the existing setup is, and so then it's very hard for them to come to any conclusions about what the changes would mean. So I think it's very reasonable to, and today I just was forwarded this, I'm particularly reminded of this because today I was forwarded an essay, an op-ed piece online, Cape Cod Today online, I forgot which one. Any rate, it had major errors in discussing who was on the special commission. It referred to bureaucrats. Now, bureaucrats are people who work full-time in government agencies and are usually not too interested in change because they want to protect their jobs. There were, however, some part-time elected officials on the commission, such as Ron and me, but the rest of the group were, business people, a wide variety of citizens. And it was primarily those people who voted in favor of these suggested proposed changes. This person also was not aware that it would have to go to the voters. He was accusing the bureaucrats of foisting a change on the public. I've forgotten some of the other problems. But there's clearly a lot of misinformation, and I do think we have an obligation, I don't think we have an obligation to take a position at the moment, but I do think we have an obligation to try and explain what the present governing structure is and what the proposed governing structure is, and possibly citizens will want to then get in touch with us and have some views about which they prefer. You've heard my views, and ad nauseum, actually, but I do think we need to do that. Anyone who is a member of the Assembly, of course, could propose a charter change, and we could then debate it and we could pass it. I don't think anyone has an urgent desire to do that. Even I, who voted in favor of the changes, don't feel that it's time yet for me to, push that forward. So I think we should do as much talking about them, the proposals, and educating people as we can, and leave it a little longer to see whether the commissioners are going to come forward.
Thank you for reminding me, Ms. Taylor. I actually myself went to the selectmen's meeting also in Town of Howard with the actual printed copy when we received it from that county governance board, if you will. And I got on the agenda so that it was done properly. So the following week, the 5 selectmen all had copies of the actual report. And basically, I just stood up at the podium, as you said, and I went through all 17 recommendations and explained the procedure on some of them and how some of them are basically housekeeping or internal changing of locating one department to another, and tried to separate the big ones, which again are the county governance and the wastewater issues. I at that time stated that the Assembly had not taken any positions on it, that I personally, as their representative, would offer my opinion if they want it, but I was more doing it as a kind of a heads up and an explanation. And I think that, I agree, I think we should all be doing that, to just let the public know what's aware, and also to clarify the procedure, because even then, some of the selectmen didn't realize that the changing of the county governance especially is something that's going to require a charter change and is going to require the full vote of the people. But the other aspect, the wastewater thing, there's other ways of them doing that. They could create a kind of a, like we created the Cape Cod Commission, there's ways that they could go about that too. So just in the venue of explanation and getting the word out there, I did in fact go to my selectmen, and I encourage all of us to do that.
Just like you heard me before discuss this with the commissioners when they've come before us. There's two issues here. One is the obvious issue of whether or not we're going to change county governments. The other issue, which kind of sticks in my craw and has from the very beginning, is the fact that the commissioners chose to bypass the process that was set up in the charter in order to do this. And I mean, they've never really come out and said this, but maybe they feel that we shouldn't be the ones who decide how our organization is formed, you know. But on the other hand, the people who wrote the charter must have understood that. They must have made the decision that the Assembly of Delegates would be, as representing the various towns, would be the ones who should vote on charter changes. So, you know, they swore up and down this wasn't a charter commission, and indeed, I believe that the commission, which I was a part of, and also Julia, went far beyond looking at the county governance. They looked at every aspect of county government. I mean, they went into the mosquito control, they went into everything. So, and they did a lot of work, and they spent a lot of time at it, so I have to give them credit for that. That being said, they're still reporting back to the commissioners, and somebody seems to be waiting like the commissioners will be like three Hamlets there deciding what they're going to do. But in truth, they don't have any more authority to push this than the Boy Scouts do. I mean, they'd have no role at all in changing the charter any more than any other organization, the League of Women Voters, anybody could do it, a private citizen capacity. So really, I think, and it's not a criticism, maybe a difference of opinion, I think when they got that report, they should have decided, having empowered these 25 people, 26 people, to stand behind it, and then come to us and said, look, this is the recommendations we made. And I offered, I said, look, I don't necessarily give you my support, but I will certainly offer you the opportunity to present it to the Assembly and call for a vote, you know, taking the path of least resistance. They've chosen not to do that. They feel they should go out to the public first. Maybe that's the right decision, I don't know, but it puts the Assembly in an awkward position, because when we're bypassed like that, as we have been in other things, I'm not going to go into it detail, but there's other things that we voted. For instance, we voted on that big DCPC about wind turbines around the Cape, and they decided after we turned it down, they didn't have to come to us anyway. So, I mean, we really have no defense against that unless we want to hire a lawyer and argue with them. So I think that there's issues. The issue of county governance is an important one, but the issue of the relationship between the commissioners and the Assembly is something that's going to have to be straightened out regardless of the direction of these recommendations at some point. So that's my little speech for the day. Leo.
Can I just add one thing to that, just to clarify things for the public? When you referred to the Assembly doing the charter change and putting together a charter review committee, it needs to be recognized that that charter review committee is not made up of all Assembly of Delegates members. I mean, the last one that we had, they were made up of, there was one sitting county commissioner on it, there was a number of the members of the public, there was a gentleman, I believe, was a selectman in town, and there was, I think there's two of us from the actual Assembly. So when you follow the charter process, it's pretty good. I mean, I just want the public to know that when we've referred to the Charter Review Committee, it is not just the members of the Assembly looking at county government. It is actually a committee made up of a number of different people.
Yeah. Curiously enough, if you look into the charter, you find that the Assembly can recommend changes to the Assembly. The charter, this Assembly can make, the Charter Review Committee refers to a mandatory review of every 5 years, but we could review this every day if we wanted to and make recommendations. So the language is pretty clear, and I advise everybody, because I read it 4 times, and you have to read it a couple times to realize it
That's
says.
just a list of
Yeah.
the members.
There are changes that can be made that do not affect the terms of office, so on, and of the commissioners, the Assembly, and the chief executive, but there are also changes that can be made outside of that, would follow a different process. But I recommend you do that. But I have the problem,
Well-
I have one more problem, is that it's all well and good to say, we're not going to take a stand on this because the commissioners haven't done anything, but somebody's going to come up to me in the Stop and Shop and say, here's what you're doing now, here's the recommendations that the committee, what do you think? You know? Julia?
Well, I think that the commissioners do plan to make some significant changes. My impression is that they do want to have a stronger executive, and that's one of the major suggestions, and I think they can do that within the budgeting process and with some ordinance changes. So I don't think they're ignoring it and putting it on the total back burner. That's true for a number of the other recommendations of the many. Some of them are already underway. The Russ concept, I think they're already putting out an RFP on, and so I think, and they've certainly already made progress on the wastewater issue with the request for a full report by the end of the year from the Cape Cod Commission and from the Wastewater Collaborative. So I don't think we can really say they're ignoring the report. They're definitely that is underway, but I do think they're reluctant. I mean, I'm totally guessing, but I can understand why they might be reluctant to walk in and say, okay, we're abolishing the assembly. We are recommending abolishing the assembly, abolishing the commissioners, and coming up with a brand new legislative arrangement that does not include individual representatives from each town. That's what they see as the most, I think, controversial with the public, and I think that we see as there's a lot of pros and cons on either way, and so I don't think we're ready to have a final view on it, and they aren't either. And that's why I do think it's worth getting feedback. Does the public feel very, very strongly that they want in each of their towns to have an individual member, even if that member only has a small fraction of the vote? Or do they, in fact, see the need for people elected from regions rather than from towns? I think this is worth getting. We know what the special commission recommended, regional, but let's see whether the voters, if they get fully informed about it, see what they feel strongly about.
I think Cheryl has an opinion on this.
You'd be surprised. Because actually what Julia was just saying is, I think, maybe a little bit of where I see a problem, in that the way it was just presented now, let's go to the public and tell them they can choose A or B. I happen to think there's a C. I think some change makes sense. I get the sense from talking to all of you that you think some changes make sense. But I haven't heard anybody necessarily agree with what was in the special commission. So where I'm coming from, I'm waiting soon to hear a process outlined by our commissioners. If we don't, I really think that, we should just go ahead and have that conversation ourselves. Why should 27 people, or I guess it's 26, sit around and have the privilege of talking about county government? Why don't we have the privilege of sitting around talking about county government? Particularly some of the more senior members that have seen some of the problems and would like to see them change. So I think at some point, I might not be ready to say it today, but I think at some point soon, I'm really interested in seeing that Charter Review Committee reformed. My question to you, Ron, was does the charter specify how many people have to be on it, or is there latitude?
We established that by ordinance. The ordinance determines who's on it. But you got to remember, you don't have to have a charter. You don't have to have a charter review committee to change the charter.
Pardon?
You don't have to have a charter review committee to change the charter. The assembly can recommend directly to the legislature changes in the charter.
So, but in essence.
But you have to have.
In essence, then we start to act as a charter review.
Yes, that's true.
As a committee.
But you're mandated to have this particular charter review every 5 years. But you can, meanwhile,
do
you
one
can,
of
at
two
least
ways.
that's according to the way I read the language.
Okay. So I'll just say it again, I'm not ready today, but if I don't see some kind of clear message coming from the executive soon, I'd be interested in hearing from others
Yeah.
about us taking a little bit more of a leadership role in talking about some changes that we're interested in. The second comment I wanted to make is back on exactly what Ms. Taylor said again, where let's talk to the public about an A or a B. And I saw the exact same type of argument laid out by the executive director of the Cape Cod Commission in the Cape Cod Times this week. If you looked at the byline, it said something about, shoot, I don't have it in front of me, but the byline said something about we can't continue to do nothing. That's what it said in his article. So the way it was presented in the Cape Cod Times was A, do nothing, B, do what Paul and Andy are working on. In other words, those were the two choices. And I keep looking at it from someone who's had plenty of background in this issue and saying, what do you mean we're doing nothing? Actually, quite a bit is going on. Your town's doing things, my town's doing things, your town's done quite a bit more than others. So it's not like we're doing nothing. So the point I'm getting at is if you go out to the public and you give them A and B and say, pick one, some people will put that forward, but I think there's a real, concern here that maybe there's a C, and that we may be very interested in coming up what that is, and I hope we have that discussion.
Yes.
Someone needs to.
Deborah?
Thank you. I really appreciated getting these two documents, these prior charter review things. I haven't read them completely yet, so I can't respond to that. But, when this issue first came up in terms of the Special Commission report, I listened to Mr. Lynch talk about and Julia Taylor talk about let's wait and see what happens, and that made a lot of sense to me. However, I think you've said it many times, but today was the first time it really, penetrated my head. It's really, I think, true that we have, since the Business Roundtable thing came out, kind of stood around and wrung our hands and said, oh, the sky is falling, and we're not doing anything about it. I really think that the Assembly ought to be having some kind of hearings. I don't think we need a Charter Review Commission. I just read that whole provision. We can make recommendations. The question is, what should they be? We haven't even talked about among ourselves, nor have we solicited any information from the public. And I think that's what we ought to be doing. I really think that we can't just wait for the situation to descend upon us as a fait accompli, things carved in stone. And then, as Cheryl said, it then is a choice of A or B. There isn't room to delineate a third option. So I'm hearing you about let's try to take some initiative here rather than just reacting.
Okay. Yes, Julia?
I definitely would assume that it is not A or B. A, if we say A is the existing. B is the proposal by the Special Commission. It's my impression that the commissioners are not ready to say A or B, but are thinking about possible C, and would expect that we would weigh in with D, and that there could be some sort of compromise and plan. I don't see it at all as that it's A or B. But I think that we'll be the most likely to have a successful result if what comes out is some sort of from discussion between the commissioners and the Assembly. I think it would be unfortunate if, in fact, we saw it as there'd be our plan versus their plan. That's, I think, a formula for ending up with A or nothing, or no plan. So I would hope that we wouldn't that it would definitely be that nothing is written in stone in the least, that the first step for us would be to talk to the selectmen, get feedback from the public. I would not recommend a charter review as outlined. That's a very lengthy and difficult process, and we've certainly, at least we can say from the special commission, we've got some widespread information and ideas. We don't have to adopt them, but that it is some information, and we could get more. But I think if we do think in terms of a joint process by the commissioners and the assembly, we'd probably come up with something pretty good.
Okay, I'd just like to say, I'm sort of on the other side of the fence on this, because I really believe that the discussion starts with somebody putting something on the table, all right? Now, the commissioners empowered this group, and they reported back to the commissioners, and I was ready for the commissioners to put something on the table. Instead, they punted, okay? But if you go up to the legislature, and Tom can correct me on this, they don't sit around discussing things in general, or, what are the Red Sox doing? Somebody files a bill, all right? And that becomes the basis of the discussion. Somebody puts something on the table, resolution, an ordinance saying, I think we should do A, B, or C. This is what we should do. And then it either passes, fails, or gets amended to death, but that's eventually something comes out of it. So there has to be a commitment. You can't just dance around this. If you ask the general public what they want, you're going to get A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and I. So somebody has to put something on the table. And, Julia says, well, we're not ready to put this. But, I mean, any one of us could take the language of that special commission and put it in the form of a resolution or an ordinance and file it in the assembly, and then we would see where everybody stood. Now, I can understand why you may not want to do that, but I feel that we should take it. I'm with Deborah in this. I think we should take a stand at some point.
But I really feel that we're not going to get anything on the table from the public, of course. That's not their job. But I do feel that the public can understand the distinction between assembly members or some sort of legislative body elected by regions as opposed to a legislative body elected by town and representing the town. That's a pretty straightforward, significant difference between A, the existing system, town-based elections, and B, what the special commission recommended, regionally based representatives. That's the significant issue that the public could have strong opinions on. If they do, then I think it would be desirable for us to respond to that, and I think we or the commissioners are completely capable of working out the details of that. It's not rocket science. But that's the big issue, is there really a strong appetite, as the special commission believes, to eliminate town-based elections to the legislative body? That's the question. That's what we need, people, more info on.
Deborah?
I really don't agree that's the overarching issue. But I do agree, Julia, when you talk about there needs to be a collaborative process, and you've said that for a couple of months now. But I don't see any invitation to a collaborative process happening anywhere. We have our little conversations, and they have their meetings at the special commission, but we're not, that's not a collaborative process. I certainly am not advocating that we should have some kind of hearings before we have some idea about what we, as a body, might support. I don't know if the issue about regionalization falls out on population demographic lines. I know I've been to my Board of Selectmen, Leo's been to his, there have been several other people. I don't think people in Truro want to have their representation eliminated. As Tom has said, Barnstable will always have representation no matter what model you adopt. I don't think that's the overarching issue. I think that if we're going to be part of this process, we need to figure out a way to be part of it. And what's happening right now is that we're not.
Okay. Jim?
I think everyone gets my point here, and I know when before this report actually, or the recommendations came out, we had this discussion, and it was my understanding when these did show up, we would begin to discuss them, and they're here. And I think, to Deborah's point, it comes down to whether we want to be driving this bus or we want to be sitting in the back. And I think we should start to look at these recommendations, see if we like them, don't like them, make changes to them, add to them. But I would rather be the one in control of this process than sitting around waiting, because I think it's kind of clear that these debates are continuing in a form that we're not probably privy to, or even, or if we are, we're not part of it. And I would rather be a major part of the discussion that's obviously going to have a big impact on county government and on the assembly in general. So it would be my recommendation that we do get involved, and get involved heavily now, before these changes are thrown out to the public, because I think it's clear the path that they're going to choose. I don't think they intend on coming through here to get these done. They're going to find another way. So we might as well take the lead on it and lead the way, then follow.
Okay, the question comes up, we're voting on the budget next meeting. Once that's done, we'll have more time to discuss other things. If we do have a discussion on these issues, though, I'd rather have people take a stand. I mean, we can't just beat it to death for weeks and weeks. We'll have to find out. We'll look around the table and say, who's for this, who's against it, it has to be a substantive discussion leading to some kind of if not consensus, at least a majority, understanding. So, Leo.
I don't have the report in front of me, but if I remember right, there was like 17 recommendations, but the last 5 were basically under the auspice of the changing of county governance. Just throw it out there for discussion purposes. Maybe after the budget hearings, we can schedule a 2 or 3 of these topics for us to discuss, and someone can make a motion to support it or not support it or whatever, and then pretty much by the end of a couple of our meetings, we would have at least taken a stand on the actual recommendations. If people feel comfortable doing that, I wanted to talk about it before we got it, so believe me, I'll talk about it whenever you guys want to.
The open meeting law, which we're about to discuss, has tied me up a little bit, because I'm not certain, I'll ask the clerk, whether if we have, as a selectman, we took votes on things all the time. We would make a motion, it would be accepted, we take a vote. But there seems to be some controversy as to whether we have to announce in advance we're going to take a vote on something. I don't think so. I think as long as the subject is on the agenda and it's under discussion, that somebody could make a motion and could be approved. So, we understand that? Okay.
Well,
Why not just?
that subject came up recently at a Harwich Board of Selectmen's meeting, where they had on the agenda to review such and such document, and after they reviewed it, they took a vote, and that was called, a point of order was called from somebody from the audience, because the agenda did not say they were going to review and vote. So I would say, to cover yourself, if we're going to pick a number of these, recommendations, unless you want to look at the whole document in one session, that's entirely up to the speaker how he wants to approach it. But I certainly would write on there to discuss and vote. That way they were covered. And if we don't vote, we don't vote.
Yeah.
I was going to say almost exactly the same thing that the delegate, exactly, from Harwich is saying, because why not? And if you're looking for someone to put something forward, the commission did, the 27-member commission did. So put forward the one we want to talk about, and then we debate it, and then if we want to amend it, we can do that.
All right, so this is going to, so we can vote on the budget next month, so you guys have when's the meeting after that? The 16th of May is the next meeting. Okay, so you have till the 16th of May to come and propose something or recommend.
The only other comment I would make is that I think the message I hope is, at least coming from me, is that I would like the county commissioners to outline a process by which they're going to consider these recommendations. And what I'm hearing is frustration that a process hasn't been really explained to us so that we understand how they're going to get input from the public, how they're going to arrive at their conclusions. Are there going to be any meetings that include the Assembly? And if they put something forward in the near term that explained the process, that would help me decide whether we need to do what we're talking about. But until I see something from them saying that, I feel the same way. I feel like the Assembly is being left out, and I certainly didn't hear much about the public either. I heard maybe 2 or 3, not even hearings, but forums, and I know that means the Lower Cape usually my end of the Cape will get short shrift, because my folks are not going to drive to Orleans to debate about Assembly delegates. I know,
Okay.
I know they won't.
Well,
Yeah.
the issue of those of us who attended those meetings, and I kept harping on this, are you going to go to the ballot this November? Are you going to do something? It wasn't because I was in a hurry, but because if they don't do that, and obviously they're not going to, this sort of Damocles is going to be hanging over us for another 2 years. It's going to be 2 years before it can go. So we could be sitting here for 2 years every so often discussing this thing. That's why I said, hey, I'm not going to use the colloquialism, but either do it or don't do it, And and so they've chosen not to do it. So the process that Cheryl discusses this could be like the 21st Century Task Force, that it could go on and on and on. And I just felt that it should come to some resolution. And if the Assembly was to take a strong stand and, let's say, vote these things down, I think the message would be sent that they weren't going to go anywhere. If we supported them, then it would be an easier process. So.
For those of you who are contemplating proceeding with the process, I would like to suggest that you come to us not borrowing the work of the special commission, because I think that's somebody else's homework, but proactively come up with your own recommendations or suggestions of what you want to have discussed. I think if we start with that document or that report, you end up hamstringing a real official charter review process if in case we want to start one up. So if you have an original thought, I'd love to hear it. If you want to borrow recommendation number 13 or 14 and start the discussion there, I personally would not support that idea.
Well, I think discussion will be re-enjoined in 3 weeks.
Are we going to continue to have this on our agenda so that we can talk about it?
Yes.
Because it seems to me that it may be appropriate to have some further discussion about it. I also, just as a sort of substantive matter, it'd be nice if the commissioners would outline a process by which all of this is going. We can't make them do that. We can talk about what kind of a process we'd like to see, and we can come up with that kind of a recommendation, but we can't. I feel like we've been sitting around waiting to be invited to come to the party. I'm kind of ready to have our own party.
Well, I just, in my own defense, my feeling has always been that the charter says that charter changes run through the Assembly. So it's not that we've been sitting around waiting to be invited to the party. We've been sitting around waiting for them to come to us and to deliberate on this. And they've made some suggestions that they weren't going to do that. But I think they're realizing now that without the support of the Assembly, without going through the process that's set out in the charter, they're going to have two things against them. They're going to go to the legislature with major changes in how the government is structured. They're also going to have to go to the legislature and explain why they're not doing it according to how the voters 5 years ago decided it was going to be done. So anyway, I don't want to beat this to death, but we will definitely have further discussions on this. I encourage anybody to file non-binding resolutions or whatever, so we have something on the table that we're actually voting on. So anyway, Cheryl, you're up with the discussion regarding the open meeting law.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. This agenda item came about because we met 2 weeks ago, and it was the first meeting I think that we had after 2 meetings of the county commissioners had come to my attention, and I had mentioned them to a couple of the delegates from the Lower Cape. Frankly, I was a bit taken aback by what I saw. When I came to county government, I thought, if anything, it would be just, I don't know, that compliance with the open meeting law, whether it's the spirit of it or the actual wording of it, would just be even more stronger than what I was used to, and it seems to be actually a little bit in the other direction. So we mentioned it. I think two of the senior members of the delegates kind of looked at me and advised me to make a complaint with the Attorney General. I gave that some thought, and I've seen that done. I've seen that approach taken, and I think that approach is usually taken by somebody who, I don't know, has a different interest than I have. My interest was more putting some light on it, making sure everybody knew about it, finding out what people thought about it. Do you agree? Did you see it the way I did, or am I, splitting hairs? But it was, like I said, upsetting enough to me that I mentioned it to a couple of people, and I don't see the need to go to make a complaint to the Attorney General. Like I said, I don't think that's necessarily constructive here. So what I did decide to do after talking to these folks is I wrote a letter to the commissioners myself and referenced the two meetings that I discovered, and it's all in the letter. I had Jan copy you. Bottom line was I didn't know anything about this issue until recently, where somebody had put an article in our mail. There's some article online about wastewater, and it referenced a meeting. So I went and looked at our website to look at this meeting, and it didn't fit. It wasn't on the agenda. So I'll drop it there, except to say that I sent out the letter. It went out twice. My apologies. The first one went out this morning before breakfast. I shouldn't have done that. The actual corrected date went out around noontime today. So you have it. The commissioners have it. And it's out there. And, I hope they address it. Because in the end, it's not about filing a complaint or playing gotcha at all. It's about that I feel representing my constituents means that we fight constantly to have the highest bar when it comes to compliance with the agenda, minutes, transparency. And some people will say, oh, well, we videotape all the meetings. Well, that's nice after the fact. And if something is discussed at a meeting and you don't know that, you're not going to sit there and watch a meeting for 3 hours trying to look and see if it was discussed. We just don't have that kind of time. So really, the agenda is a critical document for notifying the public, either before the meeting or, frankly, even after the meeting, that a conversation happened. And if you want to go see it on video, I mean, this is a real luxury, having the video. We didn't always have this. So it's great. So that's what the original issue was that I had raised. Some of the other delegates from the Lower Cape, we had discussed it after the meeting. And so the letter's there. I hope it's responded to. I'm not sure it will be. But I hope everybody understands what it's about, and it's simply that I don't know what it is about me, but I reflexively always fight for the little guy. The little guy is Joe Q. Public walking down the street who hasn't a clue. And this stuff is going to affect, regardless of what we do, it affects them, and they have a right. They have a right to know ahead of time what what the commissioners are discussing, and particularly where we're talking about things that we're just not being invited to. And the only other comment I'll make is the word relevant came up a lot during the special commissions meetings. I think I heard Ms. Taylor use it. I heard maybe Rob O'Leary use it. A number of people use the word relevant, and they were talking about, gee, is county government going to be relevant in the next 2 years or 3 years or 4 years or 5 years? If county government can't act at least as professional as the towns in terms of the sunshine laws, the public records laws, open meeting law, then no, county government will not be relevant. How can it be? Because people won't respect it. So my message is, if we want county government to be relevant, then we have to at least give the public what all the other towns are giving them, and frankly, a little bit more. I'm encouraged, for example, to see that our clerk has been putting our agendas on the website, so they don't just disappear the day after the meeting. If you want to go back and see an agenda, it's there. I don't think there's anything in the open meeting law that demands that anything get on a website, because it was written before websites existed. But we all understand the spirit of it, and we all understand that most of our constituents have computers, so we do it. And I'm really proud of the work that the Assembly's done. Barnstable's town website has been I've just been amazed at it. I think that was the, sort of the image I had all along of what a good town website should be, like where you have the video, minutes, and agenda all together. But like I said, that's not because the law requires it. It's just because common sense says we owe that to our constituents. So as this whole issue of process and governance and wastewater and all of this, goes forward, regardless of the issue. That I was just really disappointed with what I discovered, and I hope you all are too, and I hope the commissioners can sort of rededicate themselves to raising the bar just a little bit. I don't see any need to necessarily put this on the agenda again. You know, if the commissioners wish to raise it, that's fine, but clearly, you know, you folks gave me the message that, you know, it wasn't appropriate for us to debate another, you know, entity, government entity's position, and I got that. So that's why I sent the letter out instead and didn't really provide any information for the...
Cheryl, the commission, originally, the controversy was that the commissioners wound up discussing the wastewater and they hadn't put it on the agenda. But then Mary Pat said at one point that it was on the agenda. I mean, I didn't get clear from your letter whether you went back and you found out that indeed it wasn't. That's the question.
What I would suggest you do is do what I did.
Okay.
Take the dates, look at the agenda. You know what, I should have copied the agendas with this memo, and I didn't. Again, I forget it. Not everybody has them. Let me resend out the agendas. The video exists, the agenda exists. Take a look at it yourself.
Oh, no, I don't doubt you, I just didn't...
No, you should, please do. Go watch
Okay.
it, because watching it is, because I take this wastewater thing very seriously, and I'm the geeky one that sat there on a Sunday morning with my computer, because I realized I don't watch a lot of their meetings. So I started watching them. And that was, when I looked at the agenda and looked at the meeting, I was pretty
Anyway,
concerned. So look at the dates, I'll send out those agendas, and just check it out yourself.
okay. Is there any other business to be brought before? Leo, do you want to say something on this?
Open meeting law segment that we're discussing. I know it's been over 2 years, I think, since we've had anyone here from the state to give us a little kind of a slap in the face or shake of the hand or a little direction. I would
Kick in the ass.
respectfully ask the speaker that maybe we should think about throughout the summer, maybe contacting the state and see if we can't schedule something in November maybe, or after the election, because if there are any new people sitting here, at least we'll be, you know, they'll have the opportunity to come and to be briefed. Those of us, if any of us are lucky to make it back again, we'll have that certainly opportunity to refresh our memories. And certainly I think there are other departments that are coming that are affiliated with the county that have not been keeping good minutes, posting good things. I think it might be a good idea for us to host, if you will, a informational thing like that.
I think it's a good idea, and I'll ask Janice to look into that, because sometimes you have to schedule those things with those.
Months ahead of time.
Months ahead of time. I mean, the confusing, there's a language in there that says that you can broach the discussion on an issue as long as you don't reasonably expect that it'll be on the agenda. In other words, if you don't expect it to be on the agenda and somebody discusses it, you're free then to discuss it, which I think is a very confusing requirement, but we do what we can anyway. Anyway, is there any other business to be brought before the, hearing none?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor say aye. Aye.